This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.
Welcome back to the Relocated South African. As always, I am in Lagos in Portugal. Today's guest has spent almost 10 years living and working in Joburg. In the 1990s, he built a career in transport, IT consulting, outsourcing and business development before taking those experiences onto a global stage. Today, he coaches professionals, entrepreneurs, and business leaders around the world, helping them build better careers, stronger leadership skills, and lasting success. He's also joining us on his birthday today. So happy birthday, Dr. Deepak Bhootra, and great to have you on the show.
Happy birthday to me indeed. No, my pleasure, Jan. Thanks for that warm welcome. I really enjoyed that. Just one correction, so it's 15 years in Johannesburg.
15, okay. That's excellent, even better. So,
yes, indeed.
Deepak, where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Houston, sir. I'm in Houston, Texas, a concrete jungle of note. When it rains, nothing gets absorbed, so we learn how to swim in hurricanes.
That's very true. I know Houston a little bit. It's an interesting city. I've been through the tunnels in downtown. That's also quite interesting.
And Jan, if you look at those tunnels, there's like a little pole on the side, a yellow pole. It says 15 feet, 20 feet, 21 feet. And that's when I freaked out. We could ask someone, is that the height of the underpass? And the guy said, near. This is for the water. When the water floods in, so that the car drivers don't try to be too smart, because they look at it and say, it can't be that bad, because the road slants down, then comes back up when you're in an underpass, right? And you misjudge that. So that pole, and you should have seen the look on my face, 21 feet of water can accumulate under underpass. Can you imagine the threat? And that's when I realized the sheer volume of water that can fall in this part of the world. So let me put it this way, sir. I do not go downtown anymore.
One of the biggest headaches in any relocation journey is the documents. Getting your South African police clearance, your apostille certificate, your unabridged records. Apostille handles all of that on your behalf. They apply, follow up, and courier everything directly to you, wherever in the world you are. No queues, no government buildings. All the details are in the description below. Click through and get your documents sorted. So Deepak, let's go back to your, obviously this is a show for South Africans. Let's go back to South Africa. You went there as a young guy. Can you just take us back? How did you end up in Johannesburg?
Yes. This is one of the most amazing stories, Jan, that I love sharing. This is a standard in any party. And when I share this, I also end up, I get invited back again. So it's not a bad story. So born and raised in India, but I travel the world thanks to my dad's job. And my dad's job, unfortunately, Jan, is his work starts once we have died. He's a forensic pathologist. So all my friends used to tell me, hey, Deepak, my throat hurts. Can uncle check it for me? And I would say, sorry, you'll have to be dead before uncle will check you. Uncle is a forensic pathologist. So I worked with my dad across the world, and he had what I would say eclectic taste in death. What that means is, Jan, his projects used to be really funny. Sudden infant death syndrome. When parents wake up in the morning to realize that the baby is passed in the cradle. Why? Those type. So he took an interest in that. And I still remember you're going to now tell me what's going on here. That man used to dictate to me. And I used to use an old Remington clackety-clack typewriter. People like you and I will relate to those, right? And I, at the age of 10, 12, had started typing out his research papers and first drafts and stuff. So I would argue that I was traumatized thanks to his work. How do we get to South Africa? To answer your question is, the man is what I would call a forensic pathologist nomad of note. In 1989, he actually got approached and he ended up telling us, hey guys, I got this really interesting outreach from Transkei. Remember the old Transkei, right? And he Bophuthatswana Transkei in that region. And he said, Venda, TBVC, if I remember. Yeah, and you remember those. So he said, I'm going to go and they want some help for me to set up mortuaries and muti murders, necklace murders, and all that was a big thing. And my dad says, what a unique way to murder someone, to put a tire around them. And he was like, for you and I, it's appalling, but for him, it's more like a scientific thing, right? For him, someone stabs you, his first question is, how big was the knife? Whereas you and I are like, the ethics. And he's like, what are you talking about? Because he's beyond that, right? So he comes to South Africa and he calls us and he says to me, "It is glorious here, the weather." That's the first thing I remember him telling us. The weather is amazing. Then he says, "Very friendly people, a lot of work to do though. Not enough budget, blah, blah, blah." And he started. And he finished his project 6 months and his goal was not to come back. But what happens now is that he had built a little network in the Northern Transvaal guys, old Petersburg.
Yeah.
They said to him, "Hey, now we got some work. Are you interested to come and work for us then?" So my pa was very confused, and he's like said, "You know what, I really do like this." But he was concerned about his work status. Now he didn't got the right support and he actually applied for permanent residency. And yeah, and these were the good old days. In those days, if you even the kids were like under 21, we put them, and I was just under 21. So my father puts in my paperwork and voila, we all got approved. The entire family, me and my sister got approved also for permanent residency, right? I was going to go to the States to do my MBA from India straight off. And dad said to me, "Hey, come visit us. Come," because he had just moved. He says, "Come, spend some time here." And I must tell you, Jan, I went and I absolutely fell in love with the Polokwane of today, the Petersburg of past. Because I think that having traveled the world, I have a lens which is very different from other people, right? One is I don't do what I call developmental couchonomics. "Oh, but did you go to that part of town? What a shit part of town." Those conversations. And I'm like, I went to that part of town. And I looked at that part of town and I was remembering that I've seen this part of town all over the world, even in America as well, by the way. Yeah. So I never do that judgment check. But that's my story, Jan. In a very simple term, a nomad father who has bred a nomadic corporate nomad, because I've lived in Singapore, South Africa, all of the world, right? I would argue when I finished my MBA, Jan, and this is a very pivotal moment for a lot of people on this call, right? Typically, my entire class that was of Indian extract stayed on in the US. I was one of those few ones who said, "Yeah, I'm going to go back." And when someone asked me, "Where are you going back?" I said, "I'm going back home." And home at that point was South Africa for me, because once you have become a nomad and you've traveled around the world, you then say, "Where can I get that adventure? Where can I learn?" And I ended in South Africa. And was it easy? No, it was not easy. I couldn't speak a lick of Afrikaans, not a single word, right? The basic stuff, yeah. But people tell me, "Yeah, I speak a little bit of Afrikaans because I can say Ukhandat," and that doesn't count. To really be able to, you need to be able to stop someone on the street and have a conversation for 2 minutes to make sure you don't die of hunger or thirst. That much I can do now. Sense of humor, I enjoyed it. But yeah, that's the story. Back to you, sir. Before I finish 1
No,
hour and you're like, yo.
I love to hear that. And you worked in South Africa. What was your experience of South Africa like, working with South Africans and experiencing the country as a foreigner?
It's what you give back. Yeah, and I've always said to people, when you walk in with all these notions, right? And the notion was that South Africa is a prior state, apartheid, dignity, all that. You're fine. I see that lens. But I also saw the human lens, right? There's a raw sense of humor that South Africans bring to the table that I assure you I have not seen anywhere on the planet, Jan. Anywhere. There's no, I will take a bet. Please prove it to me. South Africans will say the most crassest of things, but they'll say it in such a way that you have to smile at it, even though you got insulted. You have been massively insulted, but you know what? What an insult. I still remember, and this one I'll share with you, Yannick, even though I honestly speaking, I'm ashamed of it, but I'm sitting in the meeting room and my Cyber Van Dyke, I remember, looks across and says to me, Deepak, I'm so proud of you. You're saying a lot, but I don't understand a single word because I don't know what to do. Then he says, looking at you, I sometimes have to ask myself, how did you get all this power to talk? But then I look at you and I realize you're like 50 meals ahead and like 100 shits behind. So it makes a lot of sense the way you talk. And I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, uh, uh, and he then smiles at me as if it's a compliment. Until this day, I'm telling you, 30 years later, I'm like still telling you, Cyber Van Dyke, wherever you are, shame on you, man. Shame on you.
Oh, that's brilliant. But that's so true. I mean, I always say when I speak to people, every South African around the world will have the same story. We have a unique sense of humor. We laugh at stuff that people just do not appreciate. Where we sit here in Portugal, we have a lot of expats. They just cannot laugh at the same stuff. They think we're mad, but that's just the way we were brought up. So that's really interesting.
So for me, that water that you drink, right? And I drank it for 15 years of my life. I would say gives you a work ethic and a perspective of the world which is unique. Now, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I don't want to speak on behalf of South Africa or South Africans or an Indian in South Africa, but all I can tell you is you'll get out of the system whatever you put into the system. I would say that I learned so much about South Africa because I was willing to experiment also. There are certain foods I tried and certain foods I said I will never eat again. I cannot do mopani worms. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I just cannot do mopani worms.
I
But,
don't do them
but
either.
but on the other side, and my wife makes one heck of a poike course, and it's all vegan vegetarian. I mean, can you imagine? Everyone sitting there licking their fingers. Then she's too good. I mean, we make that what do you call it? I forgot right now. Where you take the samp and beans, right? You make that whole. She's
Stump.
brilliant with it. Yeah, she's brilliant with it. And then she
Yeah,
adds Indian spices into it. Oh, yeah! If you see the queue at my house for when she cooks, so
I
there's
know.
something that you kind of learn, bring it along the way, and this is someone who my wife, that is, I'm talking about my wife, right? If you ask her, she's someone who got bored in Singapore within 5 months. Just FYI,
Wow.
she
Yeah,
still has a fond heart for South Africa, and she
that
is
is
someone who's strict religious. I have never heard her swear. Jan, I've never heard her swear. But when you look at and you talk to her about her 15 years, well, not 15, she did 10 years in South Africa. Both boys were born there. I kid you not, every day is on the phone speaking to her people. Everyone's getting old. Yeah, the concept is more like, I got out of bed and Sunday, I couldn't walk for 3 days. The saddest day for her was hearing that our neighbor, right, had passed. And she fondly remembered he used to, hold my kids in his hand. Until this day, every year on his day, she does a little Hindu prayer for him. And I think that is the respect that we kind of bring here
wow.
ultimately, right? We may all act as if we are part of a different god, but when we get together, I think South Africans bring something very powerful to the table, which is they're unified in one understanding. We agree there is a god. We also agree that it's different in form, and we have cultural nuances to it. But liquor, come at my table. I like to share with you, and that's just something that we really found was really powerful,
That
especially when
is
you are like new settling into a country. How welcoming a country is. Look, the US is a very cold place. Yeah, and I don't know
mm,
if people have told you that. And I say that my US colleagues will smile at this when I say this, but the reality is that I still don't know the name of my neighbor's kids, and I've been living here for 8 years now, right? uh,
that's my
and yeah, they have their barbecues or brides, right? They have all that stuff, and I go sometimes, but I'm close to maybe two or three, and I've also decided that just rather focus on two or three and be deep with them than try to go and big big too big. Sorry, and long answer again.
that.
Back to you, sir.
Just one question that I mean I kind of have to ask. It's maybe negative, but as a foreigner and coming from India and into South Africa with all the stuff that was going on there, I'm talking as an older South African. We
Yeah.
were so indoctrinated. How was that for you before the changes happened and so on? Did you experience any negativity?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But here's the fun part, um, and I'm very candid how I give my response to Jan, right? Because at the end of the day, there's this thing that the world has done, and this is not a truth and reconciliation committee discussion, right? Nor do I want to make it that heavy. When I first moved to South Africa, I moved to South Africa for the warmth of the people, but very quickly the system also gets to you, right? And very interestingly enough, that the system worked for my dad because remember he was also a very senior person in a part of government that the government was supportive of. So even in those days, even though you had the Boputatswanas and this and all that, right? You still had some power. So he could wield that, at least get the paperwork done in the right way, to get us settled in the right way. He had a government property that was given to him to live in as well, right? So he kind of settled in that way too. Both me and my dad are cut from a different cloth. When you meet us, you'll actually realize there's intelligence, there's a worldview, and I to this day can tell you I did not face the pettiness of what I was told can happen. And I am not going to argue that others did not suffer it. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that I did not. I think because I was maybe in a little position of slight privilege of where I was. Two, I also found it very straightforward. There's this thing about Afrikaners that we always used to joke about in the Indian community. You go to an Afrikaner store, as long as you're buying, everything's okay. You'll never feel different. It's a business relationship. Same thing happens in India also, by the way, Jan. You go to India and you walk into any store, right? My grandfather is a staunch Hindu. And a lot of Hindus would argue that, okay, we don't like to serve Muslim customers. My grandfather, very simple question he used to ask me, can you identify for me in the plate of food that you're eating, which is the Muslim money, which is the Christian money, which is Hindu money? And if you can't identify that, then you should not be pretentious about taking people's money for the work you do. So to me, that was a big, big learning that the economics of taking money and working with people remain. But now comes the cultural nuances. There's some things that for me, one of the biggest things that I noticed was that the guys were at least candid about it. So as an example, I interviewed the Della Tustomatsu in those days, is what they were called, right? And as I sat there, he said to me, Deepak, I have a problem. And I'm talking about this is 1993, yeah, just a year before. Again, same thing, right? And said to me something very simple. He said to me, I already have 2 Indians in my office. I will not be able to hire a third one because there's an invisible quota. However, he said to me, but there are 2 opportunities I want to direct you to. He said one was in Kenya and one was, I think, in Durban office. And I said to him, Kenya, the country? He said, yes. I said, I don't want to go to Kenya, the country. So he said to me, no, but I want to mention that to you because I think you're an awesome candidate. And that's the fun part. When you get rejected due to apartheid, the explanation given was so clear that you absolutely can't argue with that explanation. You get it, Yanni. One is, how many recruiters tell you, you are a great candidate, but there was someone better than you. Finish it. You can't argue that, right? With that mindset, at least I knew he's giving me a clear rationale. He's also telling me how he can help me within the rules. So that was one thing I realized. The second thing I realized was that the ability to actually sit up and when you look, I still remember sitting watching the Truth and Reconciliation Committee hearings, like the TRC. Till this day, I can guarantee you one thing, and if there's one thing people have to learn from South Africans is to understand a process of cleansing. And of course, we had our all that stuff in that, right? People were storming the parliament and all that stuff. I get all that. But the point is, what a brilliant way to ask a group of people to try to come together by first admitting to the stuff that went wrong. I don't think there's any other country that has deployed it the way that we did. That's one thing I'd like to just call out. So back to you, Jan. I hope that answers the question.
No, I think that answers it perfectly. That is so interesting. So Deepak, then you left South Africa.
Yeah. So I first came to South Africa in 1990, spent 6 months there with my dad to see, and I really loved the place. I then went to do my master's in the US. 1993 June, I come back to South Africa. I exited South Africa. And there's a story to that also, Jan. This is your typical ambitious, hustle, dynamic guy sitting at work, asking himself, I'm growing, but I want to grow faster. I want to grow bigger. So I have a conversation with my leadership, and leadership tells me the problem, Deepak, is that when you are in countries, you are going to find yourself pegged to a certain role, to a certain position. Unless you pick up a regional role, it's not going to work. So in those days, the regional roles were either done from Dubai or done from somewhere else. So I was a bit frustrated, but at least I was having a great conversation. And in 2007, in April of 2007, I finally managed to snag a role in Singapore, of all places. So this guy packed his bags and went to Singapore. The goal was not to go to Singapore to, how do you say this? My goal was go Singapore, do 3-5 years, and then come back. When I left, I went to Singapore, and then from Singapore, I was working for Sun Microsystems, which got acquired by Oracle. So I was with Sun Microsystems in South Africa. And working with Sun, I actually enjoyed working with them. They used to be in Midrand, Waterfall Park. I don't know if Waterfall Park is still there, but that's where we used to be. Waterfall Park, right? Now, what happens, sir, is I get to Singapore. From Singapore, I'm now covering the Asia Pacific region. I've got a nice like a fat promotion and this and that. Wife is excited, kids are excited. Singapore is actually a great place to be. Right? Weather sucks, but otherwise it's a beautiful city. An opening comes up in India of all places. And there's one thing I'm going to tell you, Jan, which will make you smile. And I think you think about South Africa is the same way also. Expats like me, when we are in India, we cry about how bad it is in India. Hear me out for 1 second. But when we're sitting outside of India, we cry about how much we miss India.
Exactly.
So everyone who listens to us kind of feels that this is like a Jekyll or Hyde conversation going on here. Yeah, you guys are split, but it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things, right? So from Singapore, I got an opportunity to move to India. And think of it this way, a Jew born anywhere on the planet always considers that he has a right and ability to go to Israel, right? Same notion was going through my mind. I have never worked in India. Think about it, Yen. Never worked in India. But so at that point, I had been also cautioned, if you want to work in India, go in at a senior level position. Deepak. So here comes the senior level position, sales operations director for India subcontinent. And I was like, let's apply. Went, got the job. I then relocated from Singapore to India. Yeah. And I ended up staying 9 years in India, growing, because from India, they gave me a lot of Asia Pacific roles to run. Then again, the same question happened. Now what? And in the meantime, Jan, and you will recognize this, right? My boykies are growing up full steam ahead, right? And because they're also now cultural nomads, they don't know what's going on. Both wanted to study in the States. So the first boy got here, and I said to my boss, there's no fun in earning in rupees and paying in dollars. So we had a candid conversation, and it took about 9 months to a year and a half, roughly, Jan, if I recall, to actually get a role. And I got a role in Houston, and that's how I ended up in Houston. So
Okay.
here's the truth, though. The truth is that as an expat, even if I were to try to build a bridge back to South Africa, it is now near impossible for me. But in South Africa, I'm not going to find the roles that are going to fulfill me. I may end up having to go backwards. And you sometimes don't want to go backwards if you've always been on the front foot. I'm 55 years old, Yani. If I have to come back to South Africa, I would most likely come in to do something unique or different. Pile on with a couple of buddies and say, hey guys, how about a beach bar in Nice or some shit like that, right? Do that maybe. But at 55, I'm where I am. I actually exited the corporate world, Jan. I'm now on my own. I do my own B2B consulting work. I'm a sales trainer, sales coach. I'm also building out my own startup. If you follow my finger in the back, the Rise Up is my startup,
Okay.
working on that, raising funding. So it's very interesting. A lot of people tell me, Deepak, where did you get this intense work ethic from? South Africa. I learned to stay honest, tell people what I can do, cannot do, dry sense of humor, also can get very serious when required to, and very detail oriented. And I think South Africans, we think of them as, people that are very quick, witty. But no, when you see them putting the documents together, there's some massively awesome detail the guys know how to put in because they know the shit. They know your shit. And I've always said this to people. The fun with South Africans is that they know their stuff. And when you know your stuff, you're able to summarize, brief, be concise because there's no need for fluff anymore. I think you understand the point I'm trying to make. So when
Absolutely.
it comes to depth of expertise, if a South African gets the teeth into something, they typically go in pretty deep to understand. Hands on. I mean, there was always these jokes, right? That what was that one? I can't remember. When a boer maak 'n plan
A
and
boer maak 'n plan. Absolutely.
and I shouldn't say the bad word, but yeah, but it's and then I realized it's about the plan and the execution. Plan and execution. The basic when your proverbs and your phrases and your sayings operate like that, then you can understand the culture. So basically, it's not about a racial thing. I read that in a very different way. Planning and execution. Planning and execution. Most cultures will have a philosophy of let's think big, have a vision. And then this will happen and you will feel different. The problem is to get there, you need to do some work. And that's what the South Africans excel at. Yeah, man, here we go. Sleeves coming up, get in. That's the culture.
And Deepak, that's a very interesting comment because I think in the current environment, if you think now, post 2007, things have developed and your government, there's all kinds of rules and regulations that it's quite difficult to do business there, but yet there's a lot of people that still make a success of it. And I think it's that thing that people can see their way through tough times, and I think when South Africans go overseas, my sense is, and this is part of the Lekker network, is that the South Africans, they just freaking work and they make it work.
Make it work. I think you got to, this is what I've always said about some dysphoras. Some dysphoras are just uniquely inclined. And I am lucky. The Indians are also like that, right? Indians will stick with the plan to the point where they'll even cut their expenses until they make it. There's this old joke that goes around in Indian circles, which is, you want to start a business, you better be able to starve for 1,000 days. That's it. That's the metric right there. And if you do the maths, that's nearly 3 years. And if you think about it, anyone who starts a business typically knows first 3 years are going to be the most difficult while you build your network out, while you make your mistakes and so on and so on. And I think for that, you need a different work ethic. That work ethic, I would argue, the Indians approach that work ethic in let's try everything and see how it works. So sometimes you end up with too much innovation and too much ethical dilemmas. And I say, whereas the Afrikaner is going to, well, not, I don't want to do the Afrikaner, the South African trained person is going to do things slightly differently. He's going to say, okay, how do I keep my nose clean but still get the work done?
Mm.
And yes, we are also expressive, which means that if you have an emotion or you have a reaction, you just get it out of your system. Don't keep it in. Other people are too politically correct. Yes, as an example, my passport. 3 times it's been messed up the paperwork. I sat without a passport for 5 months. I could not do any international travel. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to stand up and say Home Affairs is the best thing that ever happened to humanity? Well, this cannot be right. I would be lying. So I'm making it very clear. When a system or a process fails you and the communications are vague, we have the right to say that this doesn't make sense. It's not that I didn't pay for the passport. In fact, they made me fly in for the fingerprints because after 3 sets, I couldn't figure out what was going on. Who's going to pay me those $1,200, right? So it's not a complaint about the government. It's a complaint about bad service. I want
Mm.
people to get that into their minds. I think we have got into this habit, and I've always said this to people. I come from a different cloth, and there's a message here that I'm going to give to everyone. I'm standing at a bank in South Africa, and this is about the early 2000, no, late 1990s. And there was this cultural shift. And I'm standing there, and then the lady started asking the lady in ahead of me some questions to clarify. To which the lady responded, "What are you? What's your problem? Why are you being racist against me?" Right? And I was standing behind her, and I was like, so just for the context, the person being served is Indian, the person serving is white. And this is very critical for this conversation as to how my upbringing is, how my learning is. They have this that the person shrinks back, apologizes, does it, fixes everything. Then this lady turned around to walk away, and I just stopped and I said to her, I don't think that was necessary. She spoke very nicely to you. She says, who cares? I got my work done, right? And I said something to her, which I want to repeat to everyone on this forum. When you jump to insults, when you jump to situations where you think you are pressurizing someone to behave in a certain way, no one wants to be called a racist, right, Jan? Who wants
Mhm.
to be called a racist, right? Why would
Yeah.
you do that? You don't want that, but you just did. Why? Because you wanted to job done. Here's the problem, though. That person is going to go home and is going to say, I was not a racist, but I just called a racist. And then the next thing she's going to say is, I think these guys are crazy. And these guys is going to be my race being pulled into something which is unnecessary. So I told her, what you just did is that you have given her a reason to actually go home and think that despite not being racist, why did you say what you did say? That lady had that look on her face of finally the light hit her. And but can you imagine how many thousands of people have to go and correct their behavior because of that stuff, right? Yeah. People forget the point. You are saying, doing things at that point to get your stuff done. But the impact to the recipient on the other side is something you need to really, really consider. And I have
Mm.
the last message I'll give people is sometimes I get the feeling that people feel it is okay to do that type of stuff. And why? Because someone's ancestor 300, 200, 100 years ago. I'll ask you a simple question. If you're devout and you believe in your faith, then you got to work with the person in front of you, right? End of story. I'm very sure you dig into my past. I'm sure one of my grandfathers stole from someone. Would I like to be labeled as, well, I don't know. So to me, I tell people, come to the table with genuine grievances. Don't come with inherited grievances. They just make you sound wrong. Focus on the individual. And I've always said, and I always do that. If someone makes a mistake, I also call them out on it. Yani. It's just a mindset. I think we need to get to a better mindset. So holding your government responsible is cool. Complaining about government apathy, yeah, it sounds like we do it all the time as Safas living all over the world. But the reality is that as I experienced the system myself, I did feel. Can you imagine if I were to tell you that getting a Indian, I have a overseas citizen of India card. Getting a card was also a pain in the ass, but guess what? The process worked crystal clear as long as you did the paperwork.
Mm.
In the case of South Africa, I just found that even when the paperwork was great, there were still too many gaps. That is the funny thing for me. In India, if the paperwork is spot on and everything is done, there's no ways your work won't happen.
Mm.
And I think
Mm.
that unpredictability is what's going to cost where we are as a nation. You got to bring a predictable system. That's what the Indians did. They make it very painful upfront. But once you got into it, you kind of know, okay, I'll comply.
Yeah.
Did your blood test, you give your DNA, you give your sexual orientation. Yeah. Okay, now I can't deny it. And and then this process gets into place. So
Mm.
I've gone through those complexities, but I just feel that we take on
That,
unnecessary hardship because of something that still keeps going on and on and on and on.
yeah, you. And Deepak, I mean, you've traveled all over the world, as you say, you're a nomad. Does every time you move, and that's obviously what a lot of our listeners do, is they move. Do you think you have to reinvent yourself every time that you land in a new country, or do you just apply the same principles wherever you go?
Yeah, here's how I answer this, right? Yeah, if I were to just steal the 10 commandments and take them anywhere on the planet, I assure you, no one's going to find fault with them. I always tell people, if you live your life simply, just there are certain cultural nuances. Yeah, but as an example, some countries eat rats. I would never be caught dead eating a rat, right?
Hmm.
So it's one of those things. Now, I could look at that and say that rat eaters are bad people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, look at my wife. She lived across the world and she's a strict Hindu vegetarian, right? She doesn't even eat egg. Can you imagine how many breads she has to sniff to make sure that there's no egg white on it, right? So at the end of the day, you have a choice to complain about the fact that the supermarkets don't have vegetarian food, or do the research, find what's there, and then just zoom in and always get the same stuff and just be happy about it. So it's one of those things, right? Yeah. For me, I get this question often. They were having, I think it's what, like I said, Jan, what you bring to the table. If you bring to the table a win at all cost mindset, then any culture you're going to disrupt, irrespective of that, right? So if you've got a win-win, both parties must get something out of it. Then that works globally. I kid you not, that works globally. I don't think that there's a Japanese person would not wait say to no, 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 no win-win, only win-loss or lose-lose. There's no culture like that. So I've always said to people, you will get out of any system what you put into it. If you decide to go to visit India as an example, Jan, and you decide to stay only in five-star hotels, chauffeured around, after 2 weeks, you've not even understood what's India. That's your problem. Then you go tell the world, I spent 2 weeks in India. You didn't spend 2 weeks in India. You spent 2 weeks in an air-conditioned environment, thinking in India. It could have been a simulation, right? So it's one of those things. So for me, I also get one question, Jan, which I think you will follow with laughing. Which is the best country you've lived in, Deepak? All of them. Each and every country, you have to look at it. I mean, can you imagine asking a mother, you have five sons, which one is the best?
True.
It's one of those things, right? So
Mm.
I can assure you, I went to some villages in India. We still don't have running toilets and stuff, and they literally are giving you like a piece of cloth and a little bucket of water. Figure it out, and you have a choice. Now, if you really feel that you know what, oh my God, this is so, then don't go there, right?
Mm. Mm.
But you decided to go there, then you got to go with the flow. That's the bottom line. So I always tell people, if you're going to come to, if you're going to go on a Soweto trip, right, and they're going to tell you, let's go into one of the local shebeens and have a beer and have some meal. And you're sitting there more worried about the fact that did he wash his hands? Did he do this? Did he do this? You're not going to have a great experience. I'm sorry
Mm.
to say
Mm.
that to you, right? So
That's
it's
very
just kind of,
true.
and I'm not asking you to be naive as well, but I'm just telling you what you put in is what you get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more you insulate, protect yourself, the world will also not share with you what could have been an amazing experience of figuring things out. So for me, every country has given me joy. Uh, would I go back to visit some countries? Answer is no. Why? Not because I hate the country, because there are better options elsewhere. Ultimately,
Yeah.
it's my money that I need to spend, right? Yeah. So that's how I would give you that answer. I hope that helps.
No, I think that's very clear. I mean, it's just fascinating when I listen to you, because obviously your career expanded to where you are today, where you are coaching, speaking, helping people, kind of around sales and all those things. Something that comes into a lot of these conversations seems to be trust. That is that a big thing for you?
Yeah. And in sales, if you're in enterprise sales, for every dollar that you make from a customer, you could potentially make $5 from that same customer over the next 10 years. And this is something that I learned from shopkeepers in Polokwane and in India. The guys, they survive on the community, right? So it's this thought process is I'm not selling to this one guy, I'm selling to seven generations, him, his kids, and his family. Now those days are gone. Now you got the big, checkers and all the, game, and they wiped out the small shops. I respect that. Walmart did it in the US, right? But the mindset that we need to think about is that type of mindset. In sales, trust is so important. And I always tell people, trust is never given, Jan. Trust is earned. And I want people to understand that what that means is that in the same way that you need to put some money into a bank account to get interest on it. To earn trust, you also got to put something out in it, goodwill. And I think that's where the problem is. That's why that win-win mindset really helps. Focusing on the customer's pain and then solving that pain always helps. So for me, trust is very critical. Yeah. And yeah, there's one thing I've learned, right? And I know you're not going to like this one, but Wali Musa, if you remember, ex-member of parliament, Wali
Yeah.
Musa was on an interview. And the guy was one of those guys who could just talk. He could talk the hind leg of any animal. And someone asked him, Wali, what's the difference between talking to someone in northern Transvaal versus talking to someone in Kapstan? He says, when I do business in northern Transvaal, I know exactly where I stand with the guy. When I do business in Cape Town, I don't know whether I can trust this guy or not. And that was a very weird statement to make. I think what the point he was trying to make was that you go into the harder regions of the country, the son of soil, the old. He said they are better because they will keep their word that they gave you, and that's based on trust, boss. And when you are in a eclectical society mixed up, Cape Town politicians, right? Politicians are not exactly trustworthy. So his point, I think, was very profound. That look at the way that South Africa lives in general. There's a lot of trust required in it. And when people talk about when I'm dealing in Cape Town with Parliament and other people, I have to lift my guard up higher because I don't know who to trust. Trust is very valuable. For me, I, I'm old school, Jan. My grandfather used to tell me, if you have spat and shook hands on it, right? And if you're now looking at the agreement, the relationship is dead anyway.
Mm.
Now you just want to wrap it and have a cremation of it. But trust is very critical. And coming from a business point of view, and if you do not trust the person's actions, if you do not feel that, that's why I always tell salespeople one simple truth: please stop selling, solve problems. The sale will happen. When you go into a meeting and all you can think of is your quota or the kaching, you're going to say the wrong things. And yeah, this has been my mantra for 34 years. Please focus at what's at hand. The outcome will happen if you
Mm.
do the thing at hand correctly. And my sales to teeth were also cut in South Africa, right? And that's about it. And one thing about I wanted to remind everyone in sales is that salespeople don't understand equal stature. South Africans do. When they walk into a room, I've never seen a South African being subservient. They sound subservient because they're being polite, but they actually come in with a very clear understanding of how they want to. It's not thumping the table. It's saying, "Listen, let me explain to you, and we discuss." And to me, that's very powerful, yeah. That's very very powerful.
Mm.
So I always tell people, just figure out how to gain trust. Win-win mindset. Your language matters, and trust takes time to build. Show that patience. Back to you, sir.
And you also do leadership coaching. I mean, it sounds to me like, you know, that's also one of the lessons that would apply to leadership and helping people in their leadership roles. What would you say
Absolutely.
is the biggest lesson there?
Yeah, and balance. I don't know how to say this to you, but if I look at everything that I did wrong, it was when I let the balance out of play. And I know, work-life balance sounds like a cliche, sounds like a massive cliche. Here's something I learned in South Africa. A country that has sunshine will always have more smiling faces. I've just get to that simple conclusion. The rest of us may not smile, but we still have to do something inside. South Africans tend to be outdoorsy people, right? They spend a lot of time. And I think that's great balance. So you will have, I would say to you, the highest concentration of people that spend time outside of work doing active stuff is the Aussies, the South Africans. They all come to mind. I would say that every South African boss that I've worked for has at least had one hobby outside that he spent a truckload of time on. Not a pastime, a really good amount of time that was being spent on it. Very passionate about one or two outside of work topics that they can get into deep. Many cultures fail on that front.
Mm.
Talking about I'm being a foodie and stuff, that's not what South Africans are not just foodies. South Africans are also. So I would tell you, even if you just go on the Lecture Network or something and then go back to your show and you start, you'll find that most likely 25 to 30% of the people you brought on board had a very good, solid, athletic, outdoorsy, some vibe going on. Either they're regular hikers or they're regular runners or they're regularly golf playing or sunshine, something. I mean, I was looking at a couple of books written by surfers. The top 5 books written by surfers in the world, 2 of them are South Africans.
True story. Mm.
Yeah. So, and that tells you, and when they write, they ultimately write deep from the heart. Because I think there's some abandon that occurs when you're out there in the ocean by yourself, right? It's you're bored and this sheet of water, right? What you feel at that point is what I was very intrigued about when I was reading about that. So that's how I think about these things.
That's very interesting because as one gets older, I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 68 already. So when you start thinking about what defines success for you, and you've been, in a career and now you're doing your own thing, have you changed your view on what is success?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yeah, this may blow your mind, but success, I would say, till 10 years ago was how big is my 401k going to be, my retirement package? That was it. What would I put into the bank? How many properties would I have? During COVID, I lost my brother in law in South Africa, by the way. Olive Dairy Clinic is where he passed. And he was one of the first people to get COVID, right? And in those days, people are still trying to figure out what's going on. He was on an intubation for 5 weeks. That event, at the end of the day, he was a statistic because many died, right? Many died. It's a statistic. But for me, it was not a statistic. It was something very important. Watching my sister become a widow actually made me step back and ask a very simple question. Deepak, even if you were to win the rat race, you're still a rat. You know, the corporate rat race, right? The idea we talk about. So the question was, how would you like to be remembered? And it's not that I changed my mind. My message now is very different. Please focus on your assets, focus on being a leader, but ask yourself a simple question. When your moment of passing occurs and people were to come up and talk about you, what would they say? Would they say that this was one hell of a guy who worked till 6 to 8? Or are they going to say this was one hell of a guy? He uplifted more than 800 people through his efforts of his mentoring, his coaching. We remember him because he taught me how to sell. I remember him because his sense of humor brought me through dark time. If people at your eulogy or at your wake are unable to use language like that, yani you failed. You have failed. That's how I would argue, sir. So the test that you're asking for is pretty simple. My definition of success now is it's one of those things, Yani. Is it a calling? Is it purpose? I have no clue. But for me, a purpose or a calling is like a journey, right? It's like it's a destination. I I am a nun because I praise be to him, therefore I'm a nun. But I don't know what that means. For me, being a nun is the journey that I do in terms of my. So for me, the journey is more important than the destination. So my journey now is to how many lives can I touch and let people see that I made them a better person in that process. That's a simple metric I use. Yani, not money, not money. To answer your question, money was a big driver. And I've always said this to people, guys, money never buys happiness. Money buys you options that make you think you're happy.
That is
Because
so
now you're going
true.
to stand there. Do I buy a yacht for 80 feet or do I buy a 120 feet yacht? Oh, wait, maybe I get the 80 feet, but I build a little deck on top. What are we doing right now? Stop. The same satisfaction can be had. And I've seen this, kids from Kailisha, kids from, Soweto driving around with like a 100 rand wooden car that actually steers. Look at the joy on the kids' faces racing it down the street, right? And I think that's what's missing, the joy of. And to be honest with you, and sometimes I sit back and I actually ask myself, what did possess to Deepa at age 55 to build out a startup? Because asking for other people's money is the most insulting thing that people can do to you, right? It actually teaches you all these degrees and all this passion, it all kept aside. How do you manage those emotions? That was the biggest thing for me. Luckily for me, it's this destination or this journey that I want to make an impact on people's lives. That's what sustains me. Otherwise, so that's my definition of success is that if I were to pass tomorrow, what would the people say? And if there's a little test I give people, and if anyone listening really wants to see something that will change their lives, here's what I want you to do. Write down on a piece of paper the 3 things that you would like to remember for. Now ask yourself a simple question. Are you doing the things on a daily basis that live up to those 3? And every decision of yours must be guided by that. Then you will realize that 50, 80% of your time you're doing the wrong shit.
That is
And when you
so
know that,
true.
and then you will focus and then you'll know where do you spend your money, what do you spend your money on. There's always options and choices God gives us, right? And even if God doesn't give it to you, human beings will, right? I can choose to buy the big bottle of vodka, or I can choose to buy like 10 orphans of meat. And maybe sitting there watching the kids eat, I have a shot of vodka. I don't know. I'm just being visual, right? But deathbed, I always tell people, what would you see in your obituary? What would you do if you were standing on the side, your ghost looking down? What are people saying about you? And if people are going to talk about 6 residences around the world, you failed. You miserably. Yeah, let me tell you something that'll make you blow your mind. I was I've been to Hong Kong, Bombay. These are all waterfront properties are always expensive, right? Miami. You have this people. You ask someone, where in Miami do you live? This is what they say. Oh, I have that view, that part of the ocean view. That's like a hint to you. Buddy, I'm in $1 million apartment because the view defines what.
Yeah.
I was like amazed. I was like, why? Cool. So we go in Miami, and they try to explain to us, they take you through that waterway to show you all the houses. And it blew my mind. Every single celebrity seems to have owned that piece of land. So the question is, where's the rest of humanity? And that's the problem, right? So
Yeah.
it's what do you do with money? So there's this old thing, right? We talk about everyone says, someone asked me, Deepak, you're not a big Elon Musk fan. And I'll be very cautious what I'm about to say. I'll tell you why, yeah. Because I don't know anything that he's done that has changed the world from a philanthropy point of view.
Yeah.
For a man that is world richest, I actually would love to have 6 hospitals with his name on it. I
Yeah,
would like to see a big university that says May Musk International University. Where is it?
Mm.
And please don't misunderstand me. He's also my age, I think. He's crossed 50s, right? When you cross 50 years of age, you really need to ask yourself, how long are you going to live? Really? You want to be remembered for the richest person on the planet? That's it? I'll leave it at that. Those sounds tell you enough, sir. But I'm not picking on anyone. Since he's one of the big South Africans on the planet, right? We're proud of him. All I'm saying is that I would be extremely proud if I could see his name on a couple of things that really make you stop. I would like him to solve I'm not saying solve world hunger, but hey, can you help us with cancer as an example? With that type of resources, one phone call of his, he can raise, I would argue, Yani, one day, $100 billion.
Mm.
With
No, it's
$100
very
billion
true.
can build one of the world's most exciting, networks for kids with cancer or something. But I just don't understand it. Every conversation is always about, I'm going to sell this many cars. Let's go to Mars. And there's this saying where I come from in India, right? If your house inside the paint is peeling, but outside other people's houses are shining because you paint them, then you got to ask yourself, why not paint your own house first?
Mm.
So it's just one of those weird things, right?
Mm.
I don't know how to explain it to you, but I just feel a bit despondent sometimes when I look around the world. I do believe there is massive disparity. I do believe in capitalism at the same time, Yani, right? I do.
Mm.
Because you and I know that, it's not a good culture where everyone is relying on each other, but there's a different culture I'm talking about. It's not monetary. I would
Mm.
like people to rely on me for a rational reason, right? So that's pretty much what I wanted to say on this emotional question. I made it
No,
into an emotional question, but it was a straightforward question.
but maybe that I've read somewhere that your personal philosophy says grow together, rejoice together. Is that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah. So now here's the fun part. That word, I would, where did I pick it up from? It'll make you laugh. So here I am over Easter, and there was something on TV, and a group of people standing under, it's like, I think it's baobab tree or some tree, the big one. And they will just form a church and they'll have a little gathering there, right? And there was a hymn being sung, and I couldn't understand a single word, right? It was Zulu. Then I went online, I was just curious, and then I found this word Jabula, Jabulani. And then, of course, the Soccer World Cup, the ball was called Jabulani, right? Rejoice, be happy. And for me, when the World Cup was over and when I was thinking about, first I bought a dog. Yani, I got a dog. The dog's name is Jabulani, just FYI. I didn't get the name Jabulani. I said, let's bring this dog in. Because when I got him, he was a runt. And you could see that so the vet teases me. He says, he's not, you are his human therapy. You are his therapy human. You get a therapy dog. This dog got me as a therapy human. The dog is chill. Yani, it's just so, as a runt, that sometimes they have this damage that occurs with them, right? But he's my dog, right? I just love this little shit. So he's my Jabu. So when I was naming my company, a lot of people say to me, you named it after your dog. I keep quiet. I named it after a simple Zulu word that says rejoice. And that rejoice is sung over Easter, and it is rejoicement that he has risen. And here comes a profound truth, sir. Someone told me that as cultural appropriation, I said, well, no, it's actually religious appropriation, not cultural appropriation, because I'm a Hindu. And a Hindu is now, picking up the scriptures of another religion. I said, that's another downfall of the planet today. Yani, I think it should be a source of pride for you. If you, assuming you're a Christian and you're a devout Christian, it'd be a source of pride for you for someone to stand up and say that they believe that the 10 Commandments are a very simple way to look at life. It should be a source of pride for you that someone is saying that it's not about that he's risen after 3 days and so on. No, it's about the feeling and the joy that he brings to people by knowing that he rose. That's why. Now comes the grow together. Where did that come from? I want to rejoice with you, but I want to rejoice because you grew with me. I grew by helping you and you grew because of my help. That symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
Mm.
And maybe there's a little bit of Ubuntu thrown in there, but I cannot. And by the way, it took me 1 minute to come up with that motto. 1 minute. That's it.
That is.
And I've always tell people, sit back. You've spent your entire life thinking. Now comes a moment. Distill it. When you distill it, you will get this profound shock. I got this profound shock. Grow together, rejoice together. My son calls it a forced metaphor. I said, I don't give a shit. I like it.
I think it's wonderful, and maybe Deepak, we can talk for hours, but maybe at this point, a last question. Given all that we've discussed and thinking about our South African audience around the world, Lekker Network members, people that are going to listen to this podcast, what is a kind of a message that you have for people who are sitting abroad, missing home, missing family, missing South African stuff, but they're making it work? What would your message to them be?
We live in a world of technology, right, Jan? Here's my request. Instead of sitting making caricatures of yourself on the latest app from AI app, right? Deepak on a flying banana, just rather create a WhatsApp group with family and friends. Sit there and just take a funny picture and say, hey guys, sitting here thinking of you. The joy that you will bring is just about it, right?
Mm.
Two is I like the fact that the TLN thing, when I joined it, right? Actually, I joined with it, asked a very simple question. How can I help you?
Mm.
It turns the locus and the focus outwards. I think that's very powerful. To South Africans, my request would be as follows. Stop complaining so much. I know it sounds weird. Yeah, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't get into this. But one of the things that I came to, I'll give you an example. I'm on a call and someone says, South Africa is going this way, South Africa is going that way. I'm going to make sure I get my entire family out fast, right? One, I think there's a limit. Yes, you are in a place where you are honest. Sometimes I don't think we need to understand also the impact of the words we say, right? So what happens is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we talk about.
Before we wrap up, if documents are on your to-do list, Apostille handles everything and will courier it directly to you. I've linked Apostille in the description below. Well worth a look at if documents are on your list.
One is sitting from outside, you can still do a lot of graceful stuff in your own country of birth, right? I may be arguably still have, diverse or divided, what do you call it? Allegiance, because I was born in India. I carry a US green card. I have a South African passport, right? There's always these things, but you can always do something. So I typically don't disparage South Africa. That is my commitment to South Africa, that I will not speak ill of you. Not because South Africa is my motherland or anything, but I do believe that the value I got as a young, dynamic learner at age 21, that school of knocks, that school of education, that culture is something that I remain grateful for the rest of my life. I'm always saying this, right? I tell people, I don't know which part of me grew up from South African solid lekker meat and stuff, right? But yeah, all those barbecues, barais, did bring something out. Some of it went here also, I guess, right? So uh, build up your nation. We will critique where it goes wrong. I just said, guys, but I really think that it's like one of those things, like you sit on a meal. My dad always does this. He hasn't even tasted the food and he'll just koi salt on top. And I'm like, I think sometimes South Africans do that. Lekker situation. We're all sitting down and for no reason, there'll be this comment coming from somewhere that I got to, get the family out from South Africa. That's negative, this negative, that negative. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Oh.
And the reason why I don't do that is, I'll tell you why. Because I really do want people to go to South Africa and spend their money there. It's good for everyone, especially if you're worried about that family sitting in South Africa. So the message to everyone is, boss, be proud of who you are. Just FYI, I know I'm going to have to, but I just realized my son finished off the last Dori Wars that we had here. Just yesterday, I went to a small store in North Houston called Biltong, Angus.
Yeah.
And they got I went in, and tell you what, I was like crying. They got Hunter's Gold. They got Savannah Dry. And I told him, as I stop drinking, I'll call you, bring all the good stuff. And he was laughing and laughing and laughing. So I picked up little, those biltong bites, and the dust for the dog. He loves it when I sprinkle it on his meals. He loves it. And I picked up like a pound, or let's say half a kilo of roughly dry wars, because they do a killer dry wars straight from the fridge. And what I could not get was pie. The South African pie is the most
Oh, my
amazing
word, yeah.
export that I am shocked that there's no South African who's taken it global. And by the way, Nando's is here. God bless.
Yeah.
So I had my nephew from South Africa visiting. He is in New York doing his master's there. And whenever he's in Houston, he's like, we're going to Nando's, full stop. And they go to Nando's, and this time the guys realized that I was not there. So when they were leaving, it was like 12 o'clock, midnight, Nando's is closing. And I'll tell you one more thing about South African culture. That restaurant will not incinerate its food. It'll ask you, hey guys, we got some food left, or can we drop some food for you, take it with you? Only South African restaurants do that. Go check that. I'm telling you right now. The only time I've ever got food given to me at closing time was because they didn't feel great that they would throw it away. In the US, it's a culture we incinerate whatever's left over, right? Or they brought back 3 chicken breasts, mango, a lime, lemon. I was like, what? Just like that. And at 2 a.m., I was sitting having chicken breast at Nando's, because that's it. You got to eat Nando's at any given time, right?
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, my word. Deepak, what can I say? What an amazing conversation, man. I'm so chuffed that you were able to make time to chat to us.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely.
There is just so much wisdom coming from you. I really wish more people, and a lot of people, can listen to this conversation. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Jan.
And
if everyone. Bye-bye.
If people want to connect with you, best is on LinkedIn. You've also got a website.
LinkedIn, just scream my name, and I'll be there. I live on LinkedIn. Yeah, my wife calls LinkedIn my mistress. So I'm there 3-4 hours minimum a day. Reach out to me. Especially if you're a TDN member, you would find me in the member diary. I'm in some of the groups. You just reach out to the concierge, they'll connect you. Concierge has been very helpful connecting with a few people and stuff like that. But LinkedIn is where you'll find me, Deepak Bhootra. I'm the only Deepak Bhootra. The other Deepaks all got like Deepak Bhootra 666, Deepak Bhootra 029. I'm old enough to have captured Deepak Bhootra.
Excellent. Well, we'll also put it in the show notes. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.
And to our listeners, if this conversation resonated with you, please share it with other South Africans all over the world. You can find a lot more episodes on your favorite podcast platform or on relocatedSouthAfrican.com. Stay proud, stay connected, and remember, wherever you are in the world, you're not far from home. Until next time.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.